Well, look, I mentioned last night my thanks to Rita Panahi, my colleague here, for the wonderful, selfless and, dare I say, thankless work she did standing in for me since my operation on August 18. I say thankless because she was thrown in at the deep end, but of course, if you have the Panahi intellect, it's never a problem. I wanted to do two things tonight. Firstly, to thank Rita, but secondly, as you may have read, there is a new book to be released on October 1, Australia Tomorrow. It's an anthology of essays compiled by the highly intelligent young man who works for me, 24-year-old Jake Thrupp. He's edited the anthology, and it's a range of impressive thinkers from conservative, some would say centre-right perspective. It covers significant policy issues that should be the manifesto for a successful coalition political future. But almost all of these ideas that you will read here are ignored by the Morrison government. The former Prime Minister John Howard writes a splendid foreword in which he argues of the essays, not only do they deal with the cultural challenges of contemporary society, but also directly confront the threat to free speech, which so frequently masquerades as proving protection against discrimination. I've written a chapter on the crisis in Western political leadership. Tony Abbott writes about new battle lines. It'll be on sale this Friday, October 1, Australia Tomorrow. You can pre-order now on AUS Tomorrow, oztomorrow.com. And on Friday, you can buy it online at oztomorrow.com. 38 splendid essays, but the Rita Panahi chapter is astonishing. Her opening sentence argues that the modern feminist movement has been hijacked by the regressive left. I quote her, "Women's rights and the pursuit of equality have taken a backseat to pushing a relentlessly far-left agenda." Rita writes that she was a child in Iran until her family were forced to flee after Islamic persecution and were granted asylum in Australia. She argues that we betray Muslim women, quote, "when we embrace the hijab as a symbol of diversity and harmony." She said that is the last thing it is. She makes the powerful and unarguable point, quote, "For decades, the bulk of the feminist movement has ignored the plight of their oppressed sisters in the Muslim world, and now the movement is siding with radical trans activists rather than women fighting to preserve hard-fought-for rights and protections in the West." This is an extraordinary essay that she has written, and she joins me. Rita, thank you for being with me. It's the first time I've interviewed you, actually, so this is a bit strange for both of us, but thank you for all that you did in the last several weeks. We are grateful. But in this essay, you write with passion, quote, "For years I've spoken and written about the cowardice that sees the women's movement turn a blind eye to the plight of the world's most oppressed women, those living under Islam." And you say the systematic subjugation of millions of Muslim women is ignored while privileged feminists obsess over trivialities such as feminist pedestrian crossings, gendered toys and sexist air conditioning. What is the central theme here, Rita?
Well, the central theme is that too many in the feminist movement have abandoned women's rights, what the core issue should be, and are just pushing this far-left agenda, whether it's in women's interests or not. And we've seen it particularly with Muslim women and how these empowered Western feminists completely ignore the plight of these women. These are the most disempowered women in the world, living in countries where they do not have equal rights, where they're forced into a hijab, where they're forced into marriage, where they don't have the sort of security that we have here. And you would expect one of the things as empowered Western women, we would be standing up for them. And
yes,
that is not happening, and it hasn't happened for a long time.
Well, I've got to say out there, you've got to read what Rita says. It's really arresting. You're saying that the persecution of Muslim women is occurring right here in Australia. You talk about female genital mutilation, forced marriage, forced veiling, child brides. I've spoken often on air to Ayaan Hirsi Ali, who suffered female genital mutilation as a child. She spent decades campaigning for the rights of disempowered Muslim women, but then she's criticised by feminists for promoting Islamophobia. Rita.
This was just one of the most disgraceful episodes. Ayan was coming to Australia and her tour was effectively cancelled because there was this campaign against her by so-called feminists who were calling her Islamophobic, were trying to portray her as a bigot, when all she does is stand up for the women that they have willfully ignored. And yes, it is happening here. We've got a clinic in Melbourne that deals purely with women who have suffered female genital mutilation, and they may have suffered it overseas, but we've got so many that there's a dedicated clinic that deals with all the complications these poor women face throughout their lives. And issues like forced marriage, child marriage, these are all happening here.
mean, it's a courageous piece of writing. You write, and I want you to comment on this, about seeing in 2019, after that devastating Christchurch massacre, non-Muslim women donning a hijab, well-intentioned, and you asked whether any would have any understanding of what that represents. You say the hijab and other Muslim veils represent a modesty culture which requires women to cover up, and it marks those who don't. But yet, I mean, this is going on in countries all over the world, and the women are persecuted if they don't toe the line.
Absolutely. So for Western women to don a hijab as almost like a fashion accessory or a sign that they're so diverse and inclusive, and not understand that this isn't just a piece of cloth. This has got all sorts of meaning. And women right now in countries like Iran are being beaten, they're being imprisoned, they're facing all sorts of persecution because they're fighting against the hijab, the fact that it is compulsory over there. And when it becomes part of an expected form of behaviour, then it's not just a matter of free will, Alan, because if you don't wear it, that marks you as a certain type of woman, and that comes with all sorts of consequences that are really ugly.
I'm listening to you speak, and all I can think of, this is a young girl, left Iran, avoided the tyranny or escaped from the tyranny. I mean, how do women who have escaped Islamist tyranny, as you have described it, feel when the media and feminists praise the celebration of the hijab?
Well, the women who fight against the hijab, even the ones who are now in the West, do see it as a complete act of betrayal from the feminist movement, and they see it as an act of cowardice. So I have seen feminist campaigners. You mentioned Ayan Hirsi Ali, there's Yasmin Mohammed, there's a lot of them who are there and who are fighting for these oppressed women, but they're the minority, Alan, the overwhelming majority with the big platforms.
Just coming closer to home, Rita, you see, really right closer to home, you write in the brilliant essay that Indigenous women are 35% more likely to be hospitalised due to domestic violence. And you ask a simple question: where are the marches for them? 53,000 women in Australia living with female genital mutilation. Where are the marches for them? That's your point.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's 35 times more hospitalised. The rates are absolutely astronomical. And it should be the focus of so many campaigns, but we don't, because people are too frightened to broach that issue because it could be perceived as racial commentary, or it could be perceived in a way that is deemed not helpful. But what is actually helpful is bringing light to this issue and helping those women in those communities, rather than worrying about the politics of it.
You've done that brilliantly. It is an extraordinary piece of writing. I just read this and put the essay down and looked into a blank space. I just can't comprehend how women have coped with all this. Thank you for your time, Rita, and thank you for the last 5 weeks. And thank you for your kind messages too. They've been very much appreciated. But this is a wonderful, this is a wonderful, not at all, thank you, a wonderful and courageous piece of writing here by Rita Panahi. We all love her here at Sky News. As I said, grew up in Iran until her family were forced to flee after Islamic persecution and were granted asylum. Her essay and 37 others you can read in Australia tomorrow, which is on sale on Friday, October 1, or you can pre-order on oztomorrow.com, oztomorrow.com.